join with us and essentially behave yourself. There were, as another member that you alleged, it said to you that you were a disgrace and essentially called you uppity, but then wouldn't do it when you put your phone up and said, say that again on camera. And I believe he might have been one of the sponsors of this resolution.
All right, guys, so we got to follow up on the story about the Tennessee GOP Republicans finally growing a pair, okay, getting some cojones, okay, finally grew out, okay, as they moved to expel 3 Democrats who helped stage an insurrection at the state capitol, okay. Now, I thought that all 3 of them would be expelled, okay. However, what happened was that 2 of them were expelled and 1 survived. Now, it just so happens that the one that survived was a white woman, and the 2 that got expelled were 2 black men. Now, I want you guys to keep in mind that Miss Gloria Johnson only survived by 1 vote, okay? But I still have questions. I got questions in regards to what may have been the reasoning behind Republicans or a Republican choosing not to vote to expel Miss Gloria Johnson, because I wanted to see all 3 of them get expelled. And it's a good thing that the Republican Speaker of the House there in the state of Tennessee went on Fox News and explained what the possible reasoning was. Take a look.
Chaos erupting at Tennessee's Capitol as lawmakers expelled 2 Democratic state representatives who took part in this gun control protest after the deadly Nashville school shooting. But while state representatives Justin Jones and Justin Pearson were removed, the 3rd, Gloria Johnson, well, she survived the vote. And she claims that's because of racism.
I think it's pretty clear I'm a 60-year-old white woman, and they are 2 young black men. I was talked down to as a woman, mansplained to, but it was completely different from the questioning that they got.
Tennessee State Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton, was there yesterday, and he joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us. So you heard Representative Johnson's characterizations of the questions about their behavior on the well that day and her explanation for why she survived and the other 2 were expelled. What's your reaction?
Well, I mean, that's a false narrative on her part. She had 2 attorneys in the well. And if you go back and look at the opening, her attorney, John Mark Wendell, came out strong, made a lot of points that she was not as active a participant as the other 2. She didn't grab the bullhorn. She didn't scream and yell. She didn't lead the protest. Well, the one evidence of all 3, they were able to make their statements, have representation. Some of the members felt that she was not as active participant in leading the protest from the House.
In fact, isn't that the argument she made to you, that she wasn't as active as the other 2 who were expelled? I'm reading a quote from her. She said, "I went to the well. As long as this microphone was on, I stood with them. As long as this microphone was on, they spoke and didn't yell. And when we called a recess, I think that's when the megaphone came out. I absolutely never yelled. This is about me as I understand it. I didn't speak in a voice as any other member on this floor. Make what you will." So she is making an argument, it sounds, that she behaved differently than the 2 that were expelled. And yet when you hear her go on CNN, she's saying it's because she's white and they are black.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. She's trying to put political racism in this, which there was nothing on this. They were all given due process. They were all 3 that were up there. They all 3 went for expulsion. Even the Tennesseans said that they led the protest from the House floor. And so she made her statements. She separated.
She played it smart. She played it smart. She didn't go up there bath-mouthing down, disrespecting nobody. That's what she did. You know what I'm saying? Let's be 100. She played it smart. She strategized how to come towards the opposition, basically.
Separated herself. Actually, she separated herself from the other 2 and said, I didn't have the megaphone. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just stood there with them, alongside them. And so she made her case that she, as you said, did not do what they did on the House.
Yeah, I mean, if were this a court of law, that would be the witness being impeached on cross-examination, making conflicting statements to you in her making a case not to be expelled, and to CNN in making the case that it was racism.
Yeah, so as you can see there, the mainstream liberal media, of course, is trying to peddle a narrative of racism here. That the only reason that Miss Gloria Johnson survived and the other two did not is because she is a white woman. However, according to her own testimony, she was not as active of a participant. She was not as disruptive as the other two. Okay, she seemed to be kind of third wheeling, right? And she was just there, okay, supporting them more so than actively participating. Again, according to her own testimony, right? But when asked and confronted about why there was a difference, she basically said that it was racism. She cried a race card. Again, you know, it's just funny because people with smooth brains can't process this idea that, hey, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, there's something more to why certain people receive certain punishments than just race, even though there appears to be some type of disparity. If you actually listen to the arguments in regards to why the punishment was given out, maybe you can find an explanation that has nothing to do with race. But again, there are people out here, race hustlers, like the one we're about to talk about here today, Don Lemon, okay, who's going full woke here, trying to save his job at CNN because women hate him because he's a misogynist, a sexist, allegedly. You got smooth brain people like Don Lemon. They can't comprehend these things, right? They can't comprehend the idea that, hey, maybe, just maybe, they received different punishments because they did different things, right? Or they had different levels of participation in the insurrection, right? Now, again, me personally, I still think that she should have been voted out. And keep in mind, she was only one vote short. So it's not like all of the Tennessee Republicans were like, oh, she's a white woman, we're not going to vote for her, right? Like, there was some people who legitimately listened to the arguments, like, okay, she didn't participate as much. But again, most Republicans thought that she should have been kicked out. But again, that doesn't stop the mainstream liberal media from crown racism. So let's react to Don Lemon here, crown racism over this incident.
With you, God bless you.
Representative, I know you got a long drive home. One final question for you. All right, well, Chairman Faison has left us. And the final question that I wanted to ask him was his explanation for why the two black Democrats were expelled and the woman, the white woman, who she acknowledged she believes race played a role in that, survived by one vote.
Yeah, but again, CNN is going to fail to mention her other argument as to why she wasn't punished as much, which is that she didn't participate as much, right? She was not a leader in the incident here.
Yep.
I think it's obvious. Look,
That's obvious, Don.
they could have done a censure, right? I think the right question was why take the most drastic action afterwards?
Because this is what Democrats would have done, right? Let's just say the roles were reversed, right? Okay, and Democrats had control and that was a conservative protest. Democrats would have done it, right? This is exactly what Democrats would have done. They would not have held back. Again, this is what Democrats asked for. This is what...
All the reason I'm not talking right now because there's really nothing for me to explain. You know what I'm saying? Testimony was out there. She didn't do as much as everybody. There's really, truly nothing else for me to explain or try to go over to make an argument when it's truly just self-explanatory. These are one of those self-explanatory stories that are out there, and I'm just really want to just hear what Don Lemon has to say and how he's going to try to change the narrative, like my boy said on her.
Liberals asked for. So now they want to melt down and boo-hoo and cry about it, but they set the precedent to do this type of stuff. This is what we're at in politics. You got to fight fire with fire, right? You can't be soft on these people. You can't. It is what it is. I don't like it, but it is what it is.
This is exactly what our country was built on protesting. Not everyone protests aren't perfect. It's also unconscious bias. It's racism. It's a double standard in our society. Obviously, I can't have to say I would doubt they would have done this to white members because guess what? They didn't.
Yeah, but again, Don, only by one vote. Only by one vote, Don. Again, these people are so simple-minded, bro. I don't understand, like, I do understand. It's easy to go out here and just to say it was racism. right? It's an easy thing to do. You don't have to think about that. You don't have to actually dive deep into what was said, what were the arguments. You don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is come and say, well, it's racism. It's racism, right? And then you get your woke points. He also mentioned unconscious bias, which basically is just, well, if we can't outright say it's racism, then we call it unconscious bias, right? That's what they do, okay? That's what unconscious bias is.
I did it to the two black members, and especially the two black men. It's like usually, especially with something like this, the way people think about black men in this society needs to really be examined, especially with protests, especially with how we express ourselves. If you look at the member there, the guy with the afro, right? He's very outspoken, Justin Pierce, right? I just wanted to be clear because there are two Justins.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be clear about because he is the afro. Yeah, militant or whatever you want to call him, outspoken, but that's his way of expressing himself. And it doesn't mean that he's being rude or boisterous or whatever. He's expressing himself, and that's how he feels.
Well, he interrupted an official proceeding, which is, you know, what the January 6th protesters allegedly did. And Don Lemon didn't come up here and give this whole explanation, this defense of, well, this is how they were expressing themselves, right? Just walking into the Capitol and getting a tour was how they was expressing themselves, right? Nah. They were never given that benefit of the doubt, right? But when these people, when they go and then they stage an insurrection, they interrupt the official proceeding, right? They're staging an insurrection. This is what Democrats told us. This is what an insurrection is, right? All of a sudden, there's this soap opera explanation of why it's okay, right? Oh, he's just expressing himself. Sure. He can express himself and follow the rules, right? That's how you express yourself in an orderly fashion, and he chose not to do that. So therefore, he has to be punished.
And the other guy is a more subdued, and he's going to be on the other Justin, I should say, because there are two Justins. That's why I keep saying Justin Jones. That's the way he expresses himself. And so I think that we really need to think about the double standard in society. You may want to call it unconscious bias. It's racism. That's all that it is. And what they were trying to do was something that was good for the country and for Tennessee and for the country, and they ended up with the worst outcome.
And I think
It's racism. It's racism for the dime. Again, absolutely amazing stuff. Look, I can understand why people's initial reaction would be racism. Now, I ain't gonna lie, when I initially saw it, you know, the first thing I said in my mind was, I want an explanation, right? Because I was disappointed. And when I heard the explanation, and then I saw, okay, well, she only got missed by one vote, right? It was only one vote away from being kicked out. I'm like, okay, well, now it makes a little bit more sense, right? Okay, she wasn't a ringleader, right? She wasn't doing as much. She was just kind of there, right? So I get it, right? I get it. Again, do I like that outcome? No, I want to see all of them get expelled, but you know what?
Asking for too damn much. She didn't do nothing. Chill out. That's basically all I have to really say. Like, she didn't do nothing. Yeah, she was there, so what? She made a good argument to where she didn't get expelled. And, you know, that's the truly outcome. Get over it. Grow up. You know what I'm saying? Let's go find another fight to go fight. For real. There's, you know, not to be trying to say that I'm here to argue. Oh, my boy.
Lawyer's reaction.
Without context, it's impossible to know what happened between these two. But what is certain is that if someone is chasing after you, it is completely reasonable for you to be in fear for your life. And assuming that he didn't have a legal, valid reason to be running after her, then her use of force would be proportional and justified, making her not guilty.
Lawyer's reaction.
I like watching that stuff, bro. I really do. I really do. Okay, so what? Okay, y'all already see it in the middle.
You can't run forever, kid.
I can't lose one more friend.
Kim, this isn't what we talked about. You know? I have no idea what you're doing.
Now, yes, I am finna to have a lot to say about this. I am finna to have a lot to say because I am a comic book geek. I'm a nerd. So for you to automatically finna come in up in here into a world that you don't know nothing about. And I understand that he's old enough to where he used to read comic books, but bro, you have not read every comic book that's out here. So yes, I do have things to say about this.
This video is brought to you by PureTalk.com. PureTalk.com. Keep your number. You keep, like, you know, the funny thing is they have this acronym, right? Or not acronym, but they have these series of letters that says lesbian, gay, bi, trans, which bi ain't even a real thing. You just freaky. You ain't got, they ain't a thing. If you can do both of them, you can do one. So they just making up stuff, everything passed by. But they got trans, ally, queer, and all, and two spirits, and all kind of stuff they got in there. But none of it is straight, right? Why isn't the movement incorporating people who are straight? Why isn't the movement incorporating people who, you know, of all different identities, persuasions? Because that's how you know it's full of crap. It's not about unity. It's all of us degenerates and misfits against everybody else. That's what they know. They know it is. They know that's what it is.
You my boy. I like watching his videos, y'all, but that ain't got nothing to do with the Spider-Man. It ain't got nothing to do with Spider-Man, bro.
That's why they separate themselves. So I'm gonna pop it up on the screen for those of you who are watching on the Salem News channel, or you plan on watching it. The trailer, in the top corner, if you pause it, it says "Protect Trans Kids," and it's an LGBTQ flag. And this little girl or whoever this is kind of walking through a door, and they got this subliminal message right here. Like, I read the Bible, and the Bible talks about the end times, but I did not know that we were this close. There is no reason for a movie trailer to have a "Protect Trans Kid" flag in the top of the doorway. Like, and they don't got it really out in the open. They kind of like got it subliminal. You have to just kind of freeze it real quick and you'll see it. Like what is actually happening in our country? If you know, it's just weird to me because I don't care what nobody say. Any real doctor would agree with me is that transgenderism is a mental illness. Homosexuality is a mental illness. That does not mean you're a bad person.
Okay, so yet again, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to agree with him because you know you could have just threw the flag up in there and been chilling on that. It'd have been okay. But to have that message up in there, which, it is what it is. I'm not finna say it ain't what it ain't, or it is what it is. It's up in there. I don't think we should be making a big issue for something that's barely in there. Now, when you watch the movie and it's all over the place, then yeah, but it was in there for a half of a second, y'all. Half of a second. To make a message, yes. Do you like it? No. Why are we going to try to expose it? You know what I'm saying? It was a tenth of a second of a movement. You know what I'm saying? Not even worth the time of uttering words of confusion just to try to make a 10-minute video.
That does not mean people should discriminate against you. You have to understand that something is misfiring in your mind. If you are believing that you are attracted to a man and you're a man, that don't mean you're a bad person. That don't mean people should discriminate against you. It just means that something ain't firing properly. in your mind. And I believe that all of these things are mental illnesses that we're forcing people into. This is not science. What science says, like this is what people should be trying to figure out. Clearly, through evolution, if there was a gay gene, like somehow there was something in the DNA that could not be manipulated, that caused a certain group of people to just be this way. Over, and for the scientific people out there, over the thousands and tens of thousands.
Okay, y'all. Not a big issue. Not a big issue for a 10-second subliminal something that was up in there.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson's site. There's much fallout this evening, and there will be for months, stemming from the arraignment of the Republican frontrunner in Manhattan yesterday. And we're going to cover that in some detail. But we want to start tonight with a trend that we have noticed that might be worth knowing about, and it has to do with the dollar. For nearly 80 years since the end of the Second World War, the U.S. dollar has effectively been the currency of the world. For our entire lifetimes, there was virtually no place on the entire globe you could go that would turn down a 20. Andrew Jackson's face beside the famous seal of the U.S. Treasury was probably America's best-known export. From Dar es Salaam to Sri Lanka to the smallest gold mining outpost in the Amazon basin, every shopkeeper on earth recognized a $20 bill. The dollar was universal, and not just universal in commerce, though the majority of international transactions were conducted in dollars, but universally held as a long-term store of value globally. The world's central banks stockpiled U.S. dollars, far more than any other currency. Now, most Americans may not have known that, or they did, but it doesn't matter what they knew. It was very good for everyone who lives here. Because there were so many U.S. dollars in circulation outside of the country, the cost of borrowing money inside the country remained artificially low. And that's one of the reasons that in this country, America, middle-class people could buy their own homes. The U.S. government, meanwhile, was able to run up astronomical debts without many obvious consequences. Now, from time to time, the Congress would debate something called the debt ceiling, but it was abstract. For most people, the entire topic didn't seem very relevant to their lives because for most of that time, it really wasn't. America printed the U.S. dollar, we controlled the global reserve currency, and that meant that for us, money was cheap. We had privileges that nobody else in the world had.
Dude, I wish my people was watching this. This is the story I should have probably led off. On my mom, I should have led off with this story right here, so we can understand of how the currency works, where it's coming from, how it's moved, and what makes us be able to afford and use the tools and trucks and the luxury houses and things that we have the way we do.
It's been very nice, but what would happen if it ended? You don't even really want to think about that because the consequences would be too ugly, really ugly. But we started to worry about it about a year ago. Really the day the Russian military rolled over the Ukrainian border. Now, by itself, that was a destabilizing event. War always is destabilizing and always challenges the existing order. But it was the West's reaction to the Russian invasion that seemed ominous. Policymakers in the U.S. went insane. Joe Biden, helped by his Republican allies in the Senate, appeared to be determined not simply to topple the Russian government in some kind of regime change war, but to blow up the post-war economic order that had served the U.S. so generously for so long. So we thought...
Basically meaning that every currency that America was using to make money, he done burnt it up. That's crazy, bro. That's crazy. That's messed up. To brag off building jobs off a pandemic just because you opened up the country.
At the time, that the real threat to our future wasn't just the billions we were sending to Zelensky. That was reckless, but probably not going to end America. The real threat with the unprecedented economic sanctions that Joe Biden was allowed to, in fact, encouraged to impose. Those sanctions, you'll recall, were supposed to hurt Russia. But even in March of last year, it seemed obvious they were going to hurt the United States much more than they hurt Russia. Here's what we said 13 months ago. We should prepare to lose our position as holder of the world's reserve currency. That is happening in slow motion. It's unmistakable. Now, the Biden people seem to have no idea this is going on, or maybe they want it to happen. Joe Biden was up there at the State of the Union bragging about how he took 30 points off the Russian ruble in a single day. Hooray, good for us! But once we stop celebrating our win, the destruction of the Russian economy, they deserve it. You gotta wonder, is there a downside to this? Could it be a Pyrrhic victory? Let's see. These policies have driven Russia, China, India, Turkey, and other countries to accelerate their flight from the U.S. dollar. Now, to be clear, that's the majority of the global economy. This may be the most reckless and destructive thing any American president has ever done to the United States. So that was last year, and at the time, it was really just yelling into the wind. Those views were considered absurd, even treasonous. Biden and his Republican allies described sanctions against Russia as morally essential. So we seized oligarchs' yachts at anchor. We closed the Apple store in Moscow. We were all assured these were important victories, and anyone who asked questions about their long-term economic consequences was a Putin stooge. That was the consensus in Washington last spring, in case you've forgotten what it sounded like.
The purpose of the sanctions has always been and continues to be deterrence. But let's also recognize the unique nature of the sanctions that we have outlined. These are some of the greatest sanctions, if not the strongest, that we've ever issued.
The president believes that sanctions are intended to deter.
As to the sanctions, the most important thing we can do is to use them as a deterrent, as a means of dissuading Russia from engaging in further aggression.
We are right now enforcing powerful economic sanctions.
With who? With who? It'd be the best damn question. With who? That's sad we have to ask that question, with who? Who are we making sanction with? Who we buddy with, brother? Let me know. Man. Why is she up there? She has no power, no say-so, but she can still sit back there and represent what? The stock market? Does she really represent the stock market like that, bro? She gotta represent the stock market like that. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about. Pelosi.
We're cutting off Russia's largest banks in the international financial system, preventing Russia's central bank from defending the Russian ruble, making Putin 600.
What? That's
$130 billion war fund worthless.
These people are such buffoons, and all the Republican senators nodding in agreement. You watch that and you wonder if they really believe what they were telling you. If they really did believe that, they're stupider than they look. These sanctions were never going to work in the way they promised because, unlike the United States, Russia does not have a late-stage finance economy. Russian oligarchs do not get rich from credit default swaps. They get rich from selling actual things that people need in order to live. Oil, natural gas, iron, fertilizer, coal, wheat. By some measures, Russia has the largest resource economy in the world. Oh, okay. So they could barter if they needed to. So a year later, despite the sanctions you were told are the greatest ever devised, the Russian ruble is just as strong against the U.S. dollar as it was before the war in Ukraine. So we didn't really hurt Russia with those sanctions, certainly not long term. Who'd we hurt? Ourselves. E.J. Antoni and Peter St. Onge wrote an incisive piece in the Daily Caller last week that explains part of why this happened. Quote, a critical feature of a reserve currency is its apolitical nature, which Biden is now gutting. After both parties in Washington destroyed the dollar's stability with inflation, now the Biden administration has chosen to wield the dollar as a weapon. Together, these two factors send a message to foreigners, which is they should...
This is why other countries don't want to mess with us, and they're like, oh, you know what? If you really gonna wave $1 in front of other countries, like they're not gonna call each other. You see what America do to us, man? You see what America do to us? They think they were stupid, man. You know, they're gonna sit up there with their other buddies, and they're gonna collab, and they're gonna come up with a new currency. We're here to make money. The money is here to be made. But yet we're going to take our own American resources that we had, or allies that we had with other countries, away from us. Please try to make that make sense. If y'all see where it's going, like, that makes no sense, bro. I'm just saying, it really doesn't. We're here as a country, you know what I'm saying? We're not going to war with nobody. We're not at war as America. You know what I'm saying? Somebody was telling me earlier that we at war with somebody, and I'm like, no. Any war that we fight right now is fighting somebody else's war. And normally when we fight somebody else's war, you know, we're making money because we're sending tanks, bullet shells, troops, hats, water. You know, we're sending these supplies to the troops, you know, and we make money off of that. So, yet again, this is telling me that they're going to cut off our dollar because we don't have other things to resource, especially if there's not a war that we want to fund, that we want to be a part of. And then stuff like that will make, I'm thinking, theoretically, will make a president probably want to join a war that we have nothing to do with. Send out threats and, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, to people claiming that we're going to do something where we're not. You know what I'm saying? We just playing boogeyman, boo, scare you.
Get out while they still can. In response to Russia's war with Ukraine, the U.S. froze the dollar reserves of Russia's central bank. To be clear, these were not American assets. These were dollars owned by the Russian central bank and the Russian people. The seizure was intended to cause bank runs and collapse Russia's credit system. It didn't work. Instead, it exposed the Biden administration's willingness to violate the trillions of dollars that foreigners rightfully own. The danger of this precedent is difficult to overstate, end quote. Now, all of us saw that happening, but you couldn't say anything because
So basically, they really just gonna really hate on us. They really just gonna sit up there and just hate on us and just tell us that our money's just gonna decrease because of what? Because other countries want to hook up and link up and want to be a part of something bigger than America, because we got a bad president at the moment. Yeah, we do. We got a bad president at the moment, and it really do be showing. And the things that he be doing, I can't believe that we be going through this. He gotta do something, y'all. Him gotta go do something. He gonna go do something. You know that boy be tripping. You gotta do something. You know that he be tripping. Some be tripping on you. Some be tripping on me. Presidents be going. And then, you know, it's sad when people can still sit up here and be like, you know what, bro, the president might not make it tomorrow, and when you can even make allegations like that, I know they come and check on him. Like, I wonder, do he be having like nurses and stuff to come look at him, like, you know what I'm saying, check his thermometer more often than any other president. I'm just curious, you know what I'm saying, because too many people left and right, or whoever, I always be having something to say. I always be joking and making jokes and saying these weird things about your boy. You know, before I send him to another country, I would want to check, like, hey man, you know, they got you running up and down stairs and people making fun of you, and we're backing you up because you were supposed to represent what? Us. For what's up? Okay, I think I found me another one. I found me another one. Found me another.
Those attacks in spite of the judge's own warning to Trump to not incite violence. I want to bring in Mike Davis, a Trump legal ally and former Gorsuch clerk. Mike, thanks for your time tonight. So you just heard Donald Trump. That was just one of many attacks he made last night. Why target the judge like that in particular?
No well why. Back off.
Well, I think President Trump understands that this is a political prosecution against him by a George Soros-funded Manhattan DA.
Okay, let me just stop you right there. George Soros donated to a PAC that then donated to Alvin Bragg. Go ahead.
Okay, so it was George Soros' money that went to support Alvin Bragg's campaign. The prior Manhattan DA declined to prosecute these charges at Alvin Bragg's urging when Alvin Bragg worked for the Attorney General's office. The Manhattan U.S. Attorney declined to prosecute these charges. The Federal Election Commission declined to prosecute these charges. And Alvin Bragg himself declined to prosecute these charges until he started taking heat from the left. And so then Alvin Bragg recruited one of the top officials from the Biden Justice Department, Matthew Colangelo. He was in the number 3 office in the Biden Justice Department to come revive this dead case in the Manhattan DA's office. They brought these bogus political charges against President Trump, and then he finds out that this judge actually donated to Biden's campaign. So that at least raises the appearance of impartiality, the appearance that this judge could be not be impartial against President Trump.
You threw out a lot there. Let me just go back and fact check a few things. First of all, Cy Vance, who was the former DA in Manhattan, he said that the federal prosecutors asked him to step away from this case. That was something that they were looking at the time. We've heard from Alvin Bragg saying that he developed new evidence, which is why this case was brought back. So those are a few aspects, but we're talking about the judge in particular in this case, right? Trump went after this judge only hours after the judge warned him in that courtroom, do not engage in rhetoric that has the potential to cause harm to anyone, to incite violence.
Violence? What violence?
Was it wrong for former President Trump to target the judge only hours after that?
So I'm not understanding what President Trump said there that could potentially incite violence. And I find it very interesting that the same Democrats who are criticizing President Trump now because he's getting railroaded in New York were awfully quiet when Democrats were running illegal obstruction of justice campaigns outside of Supreme Court justices' homes for months, still running them, that led to a 1 a.m. assassination attempt against Justice Kavanaugh, his wife, Ashley, and their 2 teenage daughters.
Nothing to see here, please. I'm not sure about the Democratic conspiracy, but that's not even what I'm asking you about. So let's focus on exactly what we're talking about. Trump called the judge Trump-hating. He said this is a Trump-hating judge, that his daughter was involved in Democratic politics, and the concern is that that could go against exactly what the judge had asked for in the courtroom. Because as you well know, the former president has a fervent, devout group of followers. You know that.
Well, I mean, are these the same followers who tried to kill Justice Kavanaugh in his home?
Okay,
I mean,
we're
this is
focusing on
ridiculous.
this topic. We're focusing on this topic, but how much of this has to do with trying to get the judge off of this case, in your view?
Well, I mean, if the judge has the appearance of bias, which it looks like he does, he donated to Joe Biden's campaign, he should get off this case. And this judge has a history with President Trump in prior cases. So maybe that's what President Trump is referring to.
This case is now moving into discovery. What kind of fight should we expect to see from the Trump team? Will lawyers try to delay as much as they can, pushing it toward the election?
I don't understand why the lawyers would want to delay this case at all. It's a dog of a case. Even the New York Times and the Washington Post have pretty much laughed at this case.
Those guys are clowns.
It's a joke of a legal theory that Alvin Bragg is pursuing. It's clearly a political hit. He's colluding with Matthew Colangelo from the Biden Justice Department to use legal lawfare here to get Trump.
And let me just say, too, we should note that one of Trump's attorneys, Joe Tacopina, he openly says that the judge in this case is not biased. That is important to note here. And what evidence do you have that they are colluding in this conspiracy, that this former DOJ employee under Biden is colluding in this conspiracy against Trump? What evidence do you have? Because I've heard you in other interviews bring up that same exact thing.
Well, Matthew Colangelo was he was the number 2 to the number 3 in the Biden Justice Department. And then in December, Alvin Bragg hired him to go work in the Manhattan DA's office. Do you think that there were any conversations, or do you think Matthew Colangelo just quit his job in the Biden Justice Department and went and knocked on Alvin Bragg's door in Manhattan? Clearly they had discussions. And I hope that House Judiciary Committee Chairman subpoenas those records from the Biden Justice Department and the communications between Bragg and Colangelo.
Do you think that this will end up going to trial?
It will probably go to trial because I don't think Trump's going to get a fair hearing in New York when you have the Democrat Party machine picking these local Manhattan trial judges, and we haven't had a Republican governor in New York in 17 years. And so there's no chance he's going to get a fair appeal. So, yes, this is going to go to trial. And when you have a 95% jury pool that hates Donald Trump, he's not going to get a fair trial.
What is your evidence for that? What is your evidence that 95% hate Donald Trump? You're throwing a lot of stuff out there, and I just am wondering what exactly you have specifically to back up your claims.
So we know that the Manhattan DA took $1 million in campaign support from 2 different PACs, not just one, 2 different PACs to support his campaign. So $1 million from George Soros. We know that this case was dead. It got
Hold on,
passed
it wasn't
over
$1 million.
multiple times.
Hold on. George Soros gave $1 million to a progressive PAC. That progressive PAC gave $500,000 to Alvin Bragg. None of it was earmarked for Bragg. George Soros' reps say that they had never communicated. There was nothing of the sort. But go ahead.
That's the first one. There's also a second PAC, the New York PAC. You're talking. There are 2 different PACs. So you should probably take a look at that when you're fact checking me. But so you have this Soros-funded DA bringing these bogus political charges, and you have a judge on this case who donated to Trump's political opponent, Joe Biden. So you tell me if that looks like a fair
Then why
process.
did Joe Tacopina say that the judge wasn't biased? He wasn't concerned about that. Why did he say that then? Are you saying he was wrong?
Well, I don't know. I'm not Trump's lawyer. I don't have to go stand in front of this judge every day. Maybe Joe understands that this judge is not going to move the venue here. He's not going to recuse from the case. He's going to have to live with this judge who donated to Joe Biden's campaign, so he doesn't want to anger him.
All right, we're going to, of
But
course,
for
check
recusal, that's not the standard. The standard is appearance of bias. There is an appearance of bias when this judge donated to Joe Biden, President Trump's political opponent.
But do you think that justifies Trump to his millions of fervent, devout followers targeting the judge? I know we're kind of circling back and we do have to end this soon, but I'm just wondering, is that what you're implying, that then justifies Trump targeting the judge publicly?
Justify speaking out. You don't think Trump is allowed to speak out publicly?
I'm not saying
about
that.
an
I'm not saying
outrageous-
that. He said
So
he was
he
Trump
can't
hating.
criticize the.
All right, Exhibit.
She thinks she's slick, y'all. She wants to make sure a person when you're probably good at manipulating or making people say their certain words or use certain sentences to lean your way, that's what she's trying to do. But it's not working for this guy right here. This guy is sharp, smooth, facts, receipts, money laundering, telling you where it's coming from, baby. That's why I'm letting you know it's going down. That's why I'm watching this. This is why I'm recording this. This is why I'm letting you know this how it goes down, baby. Don't be thinking, and this is on CNN. Come on, man. Quit playing with me.
Well, I think I think you have to look at the history of this judge with Trump and prior lawsuits. I understand, wasn't this the judge who sent President Trump's 75-year-old accountant to Rikers Islands? I mean, there's a history here that Trump is referring to.
And we should note that Michael Bloomberg, when he was a Republican, first appointed this judge, later on a Democratic governor. And we're actually going to speak to a retired judge later in the show to talk about all this. But Mike Davis, really good to have you on and to hear your points in this case in defense of Donald Trump. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You see how they try to... They don't do Joe Biden lawyers like that. Or his brother on his collusion with China. Man, you don't never hear them tough questions like that on CNN. They not asking a question. No, it's just conspiracy. I know. She knows for just 1% knows. But you sit around that desk and have people send you papers. It's not like you sitting like hearing me and I gotta go find the facts. You know what I'm saying? I gotta go make sure y'all go find the facts. Gotta listen to the facts. Got another little quick one. Got another little quick little story for y'all. When we run, they wanna play and do this and do it all day. I don't know what to go do, they say. What they really want. What they really want. What they really want. What they really do. They be looking there, boy, like you really screwed. Got pick and choose. And I pick and choose. I don't want
Every night for the last 8 years, Democrats have gone to bed hoping that when they wake up, their dreams would come true. Last night, that dream finally came true. President Trump was arrested. But it didn't happen the way Democrats wanted. They wanted Trump in handcuffs, didn't get it. They wanted his mugshot, they didn't get it. They wanted violence at the courthouse, they didn't get it.
Now remember last night they were saying we was crying. We showed you a podcast of, man, look at them crying, man. They all crying. Dude, these are the same people. Same
wanted
stories.
a gag order, didn't get it. They wanted cameras in the courtroom, but they didn't get it. They wanted a solid legal case, and they definitely didn't get that. Democrats were convinced Trump was a criminal. They knew it in their hearts. They were waiting for Bragg to tell them what the crime was. Was it murder? Was it armed robbery, assault? What'd you get him on, Bragg? But when the big moment came, Bragg couldn't perform.
Well, speaking as someone who very strongly does not want Donald Trump to get the Republican presidential nomination, I'm extraordinarily distressed by this document. I think this is even weaker than I feared it would be.
If I had to characterize it, it's disappointment. I think everyone was hoping we would see more.
I had hoped that there would be more in the indictment.
Here's where we're going to run into legal problems, because the indictment does not say what that second crime is, which is completely inexplicable to me.
It's unclear exactly. What a disappointment. Most of the country wanted to hear what Trump had to say about the indictment, so he stepped in front of the cameras around 8:30 last night to talk to us. Pretty big news event, right?
Right now, the former president himself is making remarks tonight from his home in Florida. As far as we can tell, and what we were prepared for here is that this is basically a campaign speech in which he is repeating his same lies and allegations against his perceived enemies. It is just getting started. So far, he's just giving his normal list of grievances. We don't consider that necessarily newsworthy.
The Russia lady doesn't want to air any lies, grievances, nothing. They'll just watch it, chop it, and show you whatever they think you're allowed to say. It's time to bury this indictment. No one even understands what Bragg is going for. He chopped a private payment to a woman into 34 felony counts. Bragg says Trump didn't mark the right ledger. Now, if that was a crime, the statute of limitations expired a long time ago. Bragg's bringing it back to life, splicing it with another crime, but he won't tell us what the other crime is. Is it a New York tax crime? Bragg says Trump actually paid more taxes than he owed. He should get a refund, not handcuffs. Is it a New York state election law violation? Well, Trump didn't run in a New York state election. Is it a federal election law violation? Well, then it's out of Bragg's jurisdiction. He's a state prosecutor. And if Trump defrauded voters in the 2016 election, why are all the charges from 2017? Trump wasn't campaigning in 2017. He was already president. So Fat Alvin can't even read a calendar. This case should be dead in the water. But the prosecutor's a Democrat. The jury's full of Democrats. The judge is a Democrat.
He left out. I mean, he didn't leave out nothing. He just put it all out there. He put it all out there on the line for you to understand, like, what is we fighting for? He can face 138 years in prison. But y'all taking a case that, like you said, is outdated, out everything, and we want to make it into something. That's... When is enough is enough is enough. But understandable. They never gonna see enough. Never gonna get them, never gonna get them. When they get them, then they gonna get them. Until then, they might leave that boy alone. Quit playing with him. Man, they might as well, dog, quit playing with that boy. Yeah. We just waiting on more stories to let me know, like, man, we ready, and you know what I'm saying, our boys are really ready to go all of the whole miles, go to court and everything. That's crazy, senseless, waste of taxpayers' money. Yeah, this has been another Brown Live session. It's been a good night on some chill. Hope y'all having a good weekend. Now tonight I'm gonna keep my word. We gonna keep it to the club life. You know what I'm saying? I just wanted to throw them extra little repeats of stories. Just let you know that I am following up. New page just started, y'all. Have a good night. You know what I'm saying? Until next time.